Hi, this is Dave from Priority Bicycles, and today we're going to build your new Priority 600. For today's assembly, you're going to need a household screwdriver and a pair of scissors or diagonal cutters. Now, before we get started, it's important to know that we always recommend that your bicycle be professionally assembled. Or, if you choose to follow this video and do home assembly, we recommend that a professional bicycle mechanic safety check your bicycle before riding. Now let's get started. First, cut open the box. Remove all the protective packaging and remove everything from the parts box. Open up your parts box. Once the parts box is open, you're going to notice a set of pedals. On each pedal, you'll see an R and an L sticker. You'll also see that on the axle, CRL for the left side. A red rear reflector, a white front reflector, a front quick release lever, front Fender hardware. You'll have a front disc brake rotor together with the 6 bolts required to install it. And you'll find your owner's manuals and tools. Now's a good time to stop. Read the owner's manuals in their entirety. Then resume building. Inside the owner's manuals, you'll find a variety of tools. A 15mm and a 10mm open and closed end wrench. A 6, 5, 4, and 3mm Allen wrenches. A Torx wrench. A small wrench for your light adjustment. 2 cable protectors. And 2 small caps. We will not use these for today's assembly. Let's open up the packaging and lay everything out. Now with everything unpacked, let's move on to installing the handlebars. You'll need your 4 and 5mm Allen wrenches. Before you go to install your handlebars, make sure your fork has the correct orientation. This means that the disc brake side is on the left or non-drive side of the bike, facing the rear. Now, your bike may have a rubber cap over the top cap. You can go ahead and pop that off and save it for later. Not all bikes come with this cap, and it's not required. Using your 5mm Allen wrench, remove the top cap. Once removed, take the black top cap out and recycle the protective packaging. Take your handlebar stem from out in front of the bike and place it on top of the steering tube. Grab the top cap and thread it in lightly. For now, you want this finger tight. Go ahead and start to tighten the stem in a straight position. You don't need to make it too tight now, as we'll come back later to make sure it's center. Alternate between the 2 bolts. It's good to stop and make sure your cables are all routed in front of the bike. From the right-hand side, the brake and the gear cables, they should make a nice smooth arch around to the left-hand side of the bike. The front brake cable should stay on the left side of the bike, making a nice smooth arch to the back of the fork. Now let's move on to the front wheel. Now let's install the front brake rotor. Grab the rotor and look to notice that one side has no writing and one side says Tektro 160 and has some arrows. With the side with writing and the word Tektro up, take your front wheel and on the side with the disc brake rotor mount, place the rotor, text up. Then grab the 6 Torx bolts and use your Torx wrench to start to install each bolt. Install each bolt loosely for now. We're going to come back later and tighten them all together. I always work in a star-like pattern when tightening disc brake rotors. Once all 6 bolts are loosely tightened, work in a star-like pattern to get them really tight. The wrench should leave an indentation in the palm of your hand. Keep moving in a star-like pattern until all bolts are sufficiently tightened. Once sufficiently tightened, grab the front wheel quick release. Make sure that you've removed both the plastic caps on both sides of the wheel. I currently have the wheel with the rotor facing towards me. I'm going to open up my quick release and take the nut end off and one spring. On the side with the rotor, I'm going to insert the lever end and one spring. Then I'm going to install the other spring, thin side facing the hub, thicker side facing me, and just screw it on a few turns. Now, let's go back to the front of the fork and install the front wheel. Before installing the front wheel, make sure you've pulled the masking tape off of the dynamo plug. You'll see both cables installed in the plug with the wires hooked around them. If you accidentally pulled this off, don't worry, you can place it back in by inserting both wires. There's no direction. You do not need one wire in a specific direction. There's no polarity. And then bend each wires over the prongs here. Remove the holder in between the disc brake caliper pads. It's really important once you've removed this to not depress the front brake until the wheel's in place. Now, you'll want to position your dynamo plug that the thin end is facing out and the thick end is facing in. Let's lift up the front of the bike. Make sure your disc rotor is on the left or non-drive side of the bike. Turn the dynamo plug so that it's facing 12 o'clock or straight up. Then lift up the front of the bike and insert the wheel. Be mindful that the disc rotor is going between the two pads and place the axle through the fork. Ensuring that your wheel is fully straight and all the way in both dropouts, start to tighten the nut end of the quick release. You may need to hold the nut end and turn the lever end until you start to feel some resistance. Then check closing the quick release. You'll want to feel resistance by the time the lever gets to the halfway point. Properly tightened, the quick release should face up but not hit the fork leg and require significant force to close. Now, grab your dynamo plug. Make sure the thin end is facing the fork and the thick end back towards the hub, and place it into its slot, pushing all the way down. With the wheel properly tightened, now spin your front wheel and make sure that you're seeing no rub with your disc brake. Your light may have come on. If it didn't, you may need to toggle the on-off button. Off, on. If there is rub on your disc brake, make sure to check out one of our other videos on aligning your disc brakes. Now, put the bike on its kickstand. Now that we've got the front wheel on, let's install the seat and seat post. First, flip open the quick release lever. Then, take a look at the seat and seat post. Make sure on the seat post you see the minimum insertion marking. This should be at the back of the bike, and once inserted, you should never see this mark. The seat post has to be inserted at least past the minimum insertion mark. With the lever flipped open, go ahead and install the seat and tighten the lever. Similar to the front wheel quick release, the lever should meet resistance about halfway through and require some effort to close. If it's too tight or too loose, you'll use the 4mm Allen key on the non-drive side of the bike. Now let's move on to the front fender. You're going to need your 5mm Allen wrench and your 10mm open end wrench. Take the nut and bolt labeled front fender and remove the nut and one washer. Slide the bolt and one washer through the front of the fork. Then, making sure the stays stay between the tire and wheel, slide the front fender on. If you come in contact with the light wire here, you'll want to push it out of the way so it doesn't get pinched. Then, install the washer and the nut. Since this is a locking nut, you'll need to hold the nut with one wrench and tighten the bolt with another. As you get close to tightening, you're going to want to push up on the fender so that it has appropriate clearance. Make sure it's straight and has good clearance, and tighten. Now, grab your 4mm wrench and let's install each strut onto the fork dropout. On each side of the fork, using your 4mm Allen wrench, remove the bolt and washer and install them through the fender strut. Repeat this on the other side. Now, let's move on to the rear fender and do the same process. On both sides, remove the bolt and washer. Holding the washer to the outside right against the bolt, reinstall the fender strut into the bike frame. Repeat this on the other side. Now, spin your wheel and make sure your tire is not rubbing on your fender. If it is, you may need to use the 10mm wrench to adjust the struts. Over time, your fenders may bend and start to rub against your tire. You can always bend the struts or adjust the struts with the 10mm wrench. Now let's move on to the pedals. Start with your right pedal. If you have it, put a dab of grease on the threads. Then, install the right pedal. The right pedal is standard threading, so you turn it clockwise to install it. It's very important that both pedals get very tight. Once installed, make sure and put significant force into tightening the pedal. The wrench should leave an indentation in the palm of your hand. Installing the left pedal is reverse threaded. That means you're going to turn it counterclockwise. Again, it's very important that you get the pedals very tight on the bike. Once installed, make sure and put significant force into ensuring the pedal's tight. The wrench should leave an indentation in the palm of your hand. For the front reflector, if installed, remove the Phillips screw. Then, take your small shim and with the ribs facing outside, push the shim into the reflector bracket. Open the reflector bracket on the opposite side of the stem as the light and tighten. Move on to your rear reflector. If your rear reflector has a screw installed, remove it. Then, with your rear reflector pointing with the top up, open the clamp and install. Now let's move back to our stem for some adjustments. Let's take a look at your stem and make sure that your headset is properly tightened. First, grab your brake and rock back and forth. You should feel no play. If you're feeling play, that means your headset top cap is too loose. In order to tighten it, you'll want to first loosen both pinch bolts, then tighten, just finger tight, the top cap. Then retighten both pinch bolts, grab the front brake, and check again. There should be no rocking. To check that your headset's not too tight, lift up the front of the bike and turn. It should turn freely without any binding. If it's too tight, you're going to want to loosen both pinch bolts, loosen the top cap, then retighten both pinch bolts and try again. Once complete, make sure that both pinch bolts are properly tightened. And if you have the rubber cap and you wish to, you can place it on your top cap. Now let's talk about your front and rear lights and how they work. When you lift up the front of the bike and spin the wheel hard, the dynamo lights should come on. You'll notice the lights strobe below about 12 miles per hour. At 12 miles an hour or higher, they stay on very steady. Whenever the front light's on, you'll notice the rear light is also blinking. There is an on-off switch. If you turn the lights off, like I'm doing now, and stop riding, there's an important safety feature in the lights. If you have the lights on and start riding, after a few minutes, you're going to build up some electricity in the capacitor. When that happens, if you're at a stoplight, for example, the front light will dim from 3 LEDs to 1 LED, and it will give priority power to the rear light. The rear light will remain blinking for up to 5 minutes. This is an important safety feature as accidents often happen at night at stopped intersections. This also means that when you arrive home, your lights may stay on for up to 5 minutes. In addition, if you're part of the way through a ride and you turn off your front light, you're going to notice your lights go into drain mode and could stay illuminated for up to 5 minutes. Now, if you wish to use the micro USB charging port in back of the lighting system must first be in the off mode. Your dynamo can only provide power to the lights or to the power output, one at a time. We do not recommend charging any electronics device like a phone or GPS directly from the light, as power fluctuations in your riding can give power fluctuations to the device. Instead, we recommend that you use this feature to charge a power bank, and then later use that power bank to charge your device. We recommend that you inflate your tires now to between 40 and 55 psi. We also recommend that you check your tires at least bi-weekly, and again, inflate to a minimum of 40 psi. Now, with your basic assembly finished, check every nut and bolt on the bicycle. Make sure that everything's tight, the ones we touched today and the ones that we didn't. Torque specifications are listed on many of the components and are also in the appendix of your owner's manual. We recommend that a professional bicycle mechanic now safety check the bicycle before your ride. It's a common practice that wheels can come out of tension during shipping, so you'll want to make sure that the wheels are checked for true and tension. And again, have the whole bike safety checked for tightness, true and tension after break-in, which is about 100 to 200 miles. We also recommend a safety check every 1 year or 1,000 miles thereafter. We hope you love your new 600 as much as we do. If you have any questions, our contact information is on screen. We answer email and text 7 days a week, and we're always here to help.